Hello, my name is Raven Ong, and I am a costume designer for the theater. I design costumes for musicals, straight plays, operas, and dances. I started my career here in Manila, Philippines, and I left in 2014 to pursue my master's degree in the United States. Repertory Philippines has been my home for like 3 years, where they hired me to design the whole season for straight 3 years, and then I decided to further my studies, and that's when I left in 2014. No Way to Treat a Lady. Yes,
Oh, right.
where Audie played multiple characters as that criminal who wanted to be on the front page of the Times, New York Times.
Oh, right.
So I think that was 2013, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. When did you leave?
I left in 2014, early January.
The year after.
Yes, the year after. Well, first, I think you really need to find out what you really wanted to do. I mean, at first, I went to UST and took up advertising and fine arts first for 2 years, and then I felt like I was lacking more on the three-dimensional, artwork. Everything was on paper, so I thought, in as much as I loved the program, but I thought I was missing out on a few things, like the craftiness of things and transforming from paper into a three-dimensional object. And so I transferred to Benilde. They offered production design back then, and that's when I found my passion for theater design. And
Do you remember your first teacher?
my first set of professors were amazing. I had Mio Infante, who was my
Okay.
professor in scenic design.
All right.
I had Eric Pineda, who was my mentor in costume design. I had the Batok Toys also,
Oh,
and
wow.
Bonet Alfon and Jay Aranda for lighting. It was like a star-studded faculty members, a group of faculty professors that I had back in Benilde.
All right. And then what drew you to costume design specifically?
At first, I actually wanted to be a scenic designer. That's the
Okay.
truth. I was so inspired by Mio. It was more when I had my classes with Mio, it was purely from unit sets into multiple sets, and so he really had a plan for how he taught scenic design back then. And so because of that, I was so inspired. And then I also wanted to do costume design, but then by the time I graduated, Eric Pineda was in need of somebody to work, for him, and so I worked for him as his assistant, and that's how theater, like the professional theater world, was introduced to me.
Okay. So it was Eric who specifically drew you to the costume
Yes, it was Eric
department.
Pineda. Yeah, he was, and he still is my mentor.
Okay. Does one need to know how to sew to be able to do costumes?
Yes, and being really the middle person who organizes stuff.
So did you have to learn that? Did
I
you have
had
to
to learn
learn
that.
tailoring? What did
Yes,
you have to do?
construction, and thank God we had a lot of those classes in Binil as well.
Oh, okay.
So we did a lot of costume construction and special effects and makeup. And then after graduating, that's when you were faced with the real world. How is it to work in the real world with the theater professionals?
Kasama din ba in your studies for costume design things like history? Because you do a lot of period pieces,
Yes.
and how did that work into your curriculum?
Yes. So we actually first learned the history of fashion from ancient civilization, from the ancient Egyptians down to modern times. Victorian, so it was all dissected. When we say Victorian, it spans like what, decades and decades of Queen Victoria reigning in England. And so there's a lot of that. And because of that knowledge, I was able to use a lot of those in my research. Let me say, for example, since I'm designing Snow White and the Prince for Repertory, a lot of the influences are based on history of fashion.
Where do you learn styling naman, or you putting in your own interpretation?
That is very important. Before you're able to deconstruct something, you need to first learn how to make them the real thing first. I mean, it's a big thing, especially now in costuming, movies and film and theater as well. Like, what does it mean when we say historical accuracy? right? Because sometimes at this point we're so focused on presenting something to the modern eyes, which is great. But then also the only way that things can be very successful, especially in costuming, is how well you understand the traditional way of doing things, the historical accuracy of things before you're able to deconstruct them. Like when you talk about corsets, you need to understand how corsets were being worn and made back in the Victorian Edwardian times before you're able to deconstruct them into something that's more modern.
I see. So there's a lot of research,
Yes, a lot of research, and also having access to seeing these things in real life and really looking at like the internal parts of the tailoring and the construction of these pieces.
Then I would imagine traveling is very important.
Exactly, and going to museums, going to exhibitions, going to historical collections also, and asking for permission to take a look at these pieces and really looking at them and studying them, how they're built and how they were made.
So it's quite fascinating as a career.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So question.
Yes.
Right after Eric, when were you given your first break as a costume designer?
It's actually quite an interesting process or journey for me. I first worked with Sir Eric here at Repertory Philippines when he designed Joy Luck Club.
Okay.
And then at that time, I was already working with Ana Abad Santos, both from UP Productions, and Fila. So I was already styling Anna's photo shoots
I see.
for Fila. And so after Joy Luck Club, Anna was assigned to direct 39 Steps. And so Anna was the one who hired me to design the costumes for that show. And then Jaime Del Mundo directed Shakespeare in Hollywood after 39 Steps, and they were looking for a costume designer. And so Menchu, being the artistic director at that time, came down here in this room, asked me, in this very same dressing room, asked me, Raven, we're looking for a costume designer for Shakespeare in Hollywood, directed by Jaime Del Mundo. Are you available or interested to design it? I said, and at that point I was like, my dream is coming true. Designing for Repertory Philippines, finally my dream is coming true. And so I said yes, although I was very nervous. I was very young at that time. I was, experienced somewhat, but also with assisting, just made me more confident to saying yes. And then Tita Joy that same year was designing Susical, the musical for children's theater, and she was also in need of somebody who will supervise the costume construction, and that was me. And then Menchu at some point in, I would say, early summer, June, July, called me, and I was like, why is Menchu calling me? But that was actually an offer for me to design Peter Pan, which is a collaboration between Stages and Repertory Philippines. So that's how we first worked together to Audi.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
That was 2011.
Well, how does one start though? Like, so you're given now the opportunity to become a designer. So you start with your sketches. I mean, like, who sewed for you? Did you have to put a team together? I mean,
For this one, I worked with Tita Joy many times before for children's theater. So there's always the formula, the rep children's theater formula. And because of that experience, now I have, I would say mastered what she likes, what she doesn't like, what she thinks will work, what she thinks won't work. It's all about building worlds, creating worlds, and especially this is a perfect type of theater, children's theater, to exercise that whole idea of building worlds together. And so, for example, you start with research. We started throwing in ideas, right? What we think would work, and so we always want to do something that's non-traditional. Like when you say a lot of these shows are Disneyfied, so to speak, and we try to really go away from how these shows, the princesses, were presented by Disney, and so it's really a challenge. It's
coming
really
up with your own vision.
Exactly, and so Tita Joy Verata also loves incorporating artists, painters, in the aesthetic of the show and the visuals. And so for this one, we have decided to go the direction of Erte, which is a Russian designer, and also Gaudi for the dwarves and then for the outdoor scenes. And so it was very important for us to differentiate the world of the palace versus the world of the outdoors. And so you will see that very evidently in the color palettes and in the silhouettes of this show.
And costumes have to be functional, right? They have to
Yes.
be, you have to be able to move in them, dance in them. And they're
Yes.
not, are they as intricate as real fashion, or you can, sometimes it's just an illusion, right? So these are
Yes.
tricks that you need to know as well.
It's
What works on stage?
Yes, exactly. It's a lot harder actually than fashion. I mean, in the fashion, you just like walk and that's it, right? I mean, there's less movement. But then for costume design, you have to always think about quick changes. You have to think about the amount of time that they have to do those fast changes, and what is the best way or the best approach for quick rigging the pieces. So are you going to use Velcro? Are you going to use magnets? Are you going to use zippers? Right? And also the fabric choices. Are they durable? Are they, for the bodysuits, are they stretchable? Just like today, we were talking about some actors having some difficulty and challenges with raising their arms. So there's the technique of adding gussets, in the armhole and all of that, just in order for the actors also to move the way they're choreographed and blocked on stage.
And of course, I think I would imagine one of the major challenges for a designer like you would be budget, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How do you make do sometimes when a show doesn't have that much of a budget?
You have to think about the number of things that you can use and reuse. That's always a best way to do it. So there are scenes where they can repeat the outfits, for example, especially you're doing musicals, right? Is there really a need for you to create 10 looks, for example, or can we cut those down to like 6 instead of 10? So there's a lot of collaboration that you need to do with the director as well, if they're okay with that plan, just to make sure that you're within budget. One of my techniques when designing, especially for such a big musical like this, is that counting the number of looks, plus also really showing the producers where the money is going. I mean, a lot of the times, they're really convinced and they're happy with the product, especially when they know where the budget was going. And so obviously you have to really do your best to make the outfits aesthetically looking good, and also the durability and how they're constructed. So that's me as Raven. That's my technique, to just show them where the budget is going, and in terms of like what they see in the end.
Okay, you want to show us some of your costumes?
Yes.
And then let's talk about your life in the US later on.
Yes, we can do that. Yeah, so I
Okay.
have actually 4 sketches that I would like to share. This is my costume design for the Evil Queen. And so this is very much Urte inspired, and the whole idea of the fabrication and the silhouettes and also the material that we use for this one is there's this shiny element to it. And as we know, Snow White can never be Snow White if there's no element of the mirror. And so the whole idea of the sheen or the shyness of the outfits are being reflected in the design as well. And also making sure that, she is the most beautiful, right? She is always very jealous of Snow White. And so it was important for us to really show the nice silhouette, the hourglass figure. It was important for us to show how glittery the outfit is, so that no one can beat her, in that sense.
Did you render that as well?
I did. So this is actually an original sketch, I was not able to reproduce them in printed form.
You keep your sketches, one day you can have an exhibit.
I do, yes, and I have plenty of them.
Okay. On your next trip, usap tayo.
Yes.
Alright.
And as you know, one of the formulas that we actually have learned while designing children's theater for Repertory, the formula is what are the pieces that some of the actors can share, because there are characters that can be played by, or which will be played by 3 or 4 actors. So what are the pieces that can be shared? So that's one of the things that we break down. So when designing for children's theater for Rep, it's not just about the design, but what are the pieces that can be shared?
Okay, I know there are multiple casts in
Yes.
children's theater. So let's say you have a cast of 3. Do you make 3 sets of costumes, or do they have to share?
Some of the pieces they have to share. There are just like some instances when they need to have their own, especially the pieces that are closest to the skin.
Yeah.
Because you have to consider maintaining these costumes, dry cleaning and washing, what things can be washed, and so on, because we run for 3-4 months, right? This is like a
Right.
long running production.
How often do costumes get dry cleaned in gonna run. Okay, don't answer. Let's leave that hanging. Let's leave that hanging.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
what are your other designs?
So here we have.
Oh, I can see the headdress. Is this the
Yes,
headdress?
this is actually now the actual headpiece of the queen. So you can see how much faithful they stuck to the original design for the queen. So from the rendering, we have a supplier for headpieces as well, and so now you can see how they have faithfully executed or constructed based on my design.
And it's got to be light, no?
It is like yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Thankfully, we have the supplier who really is very clever in terms of which materials to use. So we
Alright.
can really light on the head.
Good.
We have, I'll show Snow White next. So Snow White actually has 3 different looks in the show. We start in her bedroom, so that's when she thinks about dancing outdoors and all of that. So even then, you can already see how she is so much into dreaming, right, of what it's like, to live outdoors and to see nature. And so it was important for us to really show hints of the flora and the fauna in her outfits. This is her second look, which is which she wears in the ball scene, where she first meets the prince, right? And there's this line that says this is an outfit that she made herself. So there's a certain level of sort of, DIY, make my own kind of feel to it, which is very, very different from her other looks. So here you can see how this is, again, very Erte inspired, but you will see, again, the hint of the flora and the fauna in it. And if you notice the color palette, we have tried to really make them a little more tight in the palette so that we're working on a tighter color palette compared to the outdoor with the dwarves. You can see the connection between the purples and the blues here, okay, between the 2 characters. So that's her ball gown outfit for the ball scene. The outdoor one, where she finally escapes the evil queen and the palace, and so you can see how different the silhouettes are. So this is more utilitarian. She now lives with the dwarves, and now she lives in the cottage, and so obviously she can't live in the cottage in a ball gown, right? So part of one of your questions earlier, Audie, part of the job of a costume designer is to be able to follow the journey of the character. So how does one start and how does one end? And so in this case, we really want to show the changes in the outfits based on the location that it's set. So this time she now lives with the dwarves. Hence, the outfit also needs to show the outdoor pieces, but also still maintaining the same color palettes there. Okay. And then lastly, we have the mirror. So for this one, since we have the very Art Deco and Art Nouveau inspiration for the palace scenes, we have decided to incorporate the set in the costume. So the mirror here will serve as a very stiff statue, which is again very Art Nouveau. And the reason why the color is gold is because, again, the whole set design for this one is gold, and to show the lavishness of the palace. And so here, the mirror details that you're seeing in the outfit basically is not the real mirror that we see him in, but then he will be standing in the set. So he is part of the set with a huge mirror on top of his head that will show the images of whoever they're talking about. So let's say the mirror will then show the face of the queen, the mirror on the wall, and then all of a sudden in the end, it obviously is no spoilers, but it will show Snow White. So that's when the jealousy starts, right? But then in real life, if this were with the set, imagine that there's gonna be like Art Nouveau tendrils and then a huge mirror on top of his head to show and reflect whoever they're talking about. So that's the mirror. He's gonna be in all gold.
Wonderful. Awesome. Yay.
So going back to the queen, this is the design, and this is still work in progress. So you will see how we have Bonsai Shallow, who is helping us with the costume construction, and she's doing such a great job in really keeping faithful to the designs. And so you will see how the flounces on the shoulders look great. This will still be embellished, okay? So this is still work in progress, and you will see how this will transform closer to the design. And then one of the pieces that will be shared, as I talked about earlier, is this petal skirt that also is here in this design right here. So this is adjustable. The queen will be played by 3 different actors. And so it is important for them to have some pieces that they can reuse or share together. And this comes with this purple skirt underneath as well. And that, and then the headdress that you saw earlier. And then next we have here the top of the corset of Snow White when she goes outdoors. So here, another way, as you've asked earlier, how do we manage, the budget, right, and stuff. So you will see that her first outfit is actually this nightgown, and the nightgown actually serves as an undergarment for everything. So this pale lavender fabric that you're seeing is her nightgown, and then we will be reusing this for the outdoor scene again. So all she needs to do is to put on the corset and the purple skirt that will go with this one, and there you go with a complete look.
How much do you design first before you even look for the material, or do you look for the material first and then that inspires you to do the design?
That depends. I do it those 2 different ways. One is because a lot of the fabrics are sourced here, so the designs come first, and then Bonsai, being my costume supervisor, is the one looking for fabrics here, and then she gets
So
those approved.
she's tasked not to interpret this by going to the shops.
Yeah.
Where is it? Divisoria?
Yep.
Yeah,
Or
and looking for
tie-dye.
something close.
Yeah, close. Yeah. She sends me. Bonsai is very efficient because she provides a breakdown of everything, including swatches. So she always asks for approval, and if I see that they're the right palette and the right fabric, then that's when I approve, and then that's when she gets the green light to start constructing them.
Got it. Nice.
Yeah. Lastly, this is the top of Snow White's ball gown. Here we added a lot of details. As you can see, we follow the same lavender palette for her. But then when we did the photo shoot 2 weeks ago, I thought that there needs to be more. And so what I did was I went to Divisoria. I went to Divi, where I grew up, actually. Right? I grew up in Divisoria, so I'm very familiar with the fabric stores and the places where to find these stuff. And so I went and looked for this lace fabric, like a 3D lace fabric. And I brought rhinestones from the US. I ordered these rhinestones, see those rhinestones, and there will be more. So I brought them here so that we can use them for Snow White's outfits. And so there's more texture now. So it's a lot closer. It's a lot closer to the design. So this is Snow White's corset, or the bodice for the ball scene.
Beautiful. It's even more elaborate than the design.
Right. So there we go. And
There's lacing on
there's
the side.
lacing on the side. It's because this top is going to be shared by 2 actors playing Snow White. And so one technique on how to save budget and money is to make them shareable, but also the technique or the approach to make them shareable comes with the knowledge of how to make or build them.
So Raven, how's life in the US? What do you do exactly there?
It's great. It's great.
You went to study, and
Yes,
then
I went. I left in 2014 to pursue my MFA at the University of Connecticut, and now I have obtained my MFA in costume design for the theater. And since then, so after that, I worked in New York City. I worked for Eric Winterling, which is a huge costume shop in New York City. I spent about a year working there. So we did costumes for Frozen, for Lion King, for you name it. And so my exposure working for Eric for about a year really helped me when it comes to techniques.
so explain to me, there are costume companies that produce the costumes for shows on Broadway, because that's regularly being replenished, right?
Yes.
So this would be one such company.
Yes. So, and that's just one among, many others. And so I went to Eric Winterling because I have noticed how amazing the construction of the costumes were. And so I said, you know what, if I'm going to work in New York City, I have to go to work for the best.
Right.
Or with the best maker in the Big Apple. And so that's what I did. And in return, I have learned a lot of techniques with me. I mean, you cannot believe the amount of Swarovski crystals that they taught me how to do beadwork. They taught me how to do millinery. I mean, at some point I was a runner, meaning if there's like some alterations or repairs that needed to be done during a show, so I have to run to the theater and take them back. So a lot of the people were looking at me because of course all of these, you know, shiny glitzy costumes, I carry them on the subway. So it's fun. It's very a lot of work, but also it's very much fun. At the end of the day, you get to see all of these costumes on the dress forms, and like, wow.
So, would you say that one can really make a career out of costume design?
Yes, absolutely. Not to mention that a lot of the people that I work with in that same costume shop are master degree holders. So it really is an industry. So compared to how we know of the mananahe, for example, a lot of the people that I work with actually have MFAs. They have master. They really study draping, construction, millinery, makeup, you name it.
Yeah. All right, but then you ended up teaching. How did that come about?
I did. So my whole plan after graduating was to move to New York, right, and get an agent. You know, be part of the union. But what I did was I used my 1 year of my optional practical training working for Eric Winterling. But then suddenly, unexpectedly, a job offer or teaching a year as an emergency appointment came along, and I said back in Connecticut. So that's back in Connecticut. And I said, sure, if that's just gonna be a year, why not? Let's try it. The pay is nice. It's something stable at least for a year. Then let's do it. And so I did. They wanted me to extend on a second year of teaching, and I said, well, you know, sure, let's do 2 years. And then 2020 happened, and I thought, well, since they're offering a tenure track position at that university, so it's Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. And so since 2020 happened, they opened the search for a tenure track costume design faculty, and I applied for it. And thankfully, thank God, I got accepted. They offered me the position. And so now I've been teaching 5 years.
Wow.
And since then, you know, I've just enjoyed teaching, and many thanks to the theater companies here in the Philippines who really trusted me and wanted me to design for them, because I bring with me a lot of experiences and
Maybe
knowledge.
more than just the normal person.
Yes, because here we are so used to making things work in a way that it's creative still and productive, and so we work in a way that we're trained to make things work and still manage to make them look beautiful here in the Philippines. So I owe a lot of my achievements to the theater companies here.
And I understand you now got offered permanent tenure.
Yes. So back in May, the Board of Regents approved my application for tenure and promotion. So I have just been awarded tenure, and I have just been promoted to associate professor. So beginning this fall, I'm returning to the U.S. tomorrow. Beginning this semester, I will be appointed associate professor.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for still coming here and just still lending your talent to Philippine theater. How often do you think you're going to be able to do that between your teaching job?
Well, now theater is back, right? So the whole idea really is to visit every year. But you know, for as long as there are people or there are directors and theater companies who still trust me and still want to work with me and collaborate with me, hopefully at least one a year, because as you know, full-time teaching is a lot of work. I have tried to do outside of school, projects, but it's really very difficult to do two things at a time, because you know, when you're teaching, you're just like simply focused on the students and other service to the university. But hopefully come summertime, I'll have some projects, you know, outside of the US and come back here. Philippines is still my home. Repertory Philippine is still my home, and so are the other theater companies whom I've worked with in the past, and Audi being one. So thank you.
Oh, I will now have to look for a project that we could work together. Well, you know, you have the best of both worlds, because you know the saying that those who don't those who do, and those who don't teach. And in this case, you do both.
Yes.
You teach and you do, and that's very important because you bring in your experience to the teaching platform.
Yes, absolutely. And especially now in the United States, they really, really fully embrace diversity, and whatever you can, any diverse thing, especially in the arts, they can bring to the table. So that's really what makes us Filipinos shine, in the international stage.
Yeah. Do you dream of one day doing your own design for maybe a Broadway show? Or, I mean, I suppose that's everybody's dream, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I mean, sure. But also, there are so many shows out there, original plays,
Regional theater.
regional theater, summer stock. So there's a lot of those shows that are really truly relevant too, right? So shows that really help transform the world in their own simple ways. There are shows that I worked on before. I've collaborated with a theater company called The Crew. It's a theater company that was founded by Army veterans, and so they use Shakespeare as a tool to help heal trauma.
Wow.
After the wars and after serving after their service. And so those are the shows that to me are the most meaningful, so to speak, because you help transform the lives of people. And there's a theater company that I work with also that showcased the life of Victoria Woodhull, which is the first woman who ran for president in the United States. So a lot of these themes and things that really help transform the minds of the people is something that I truly embrace. Shows that tour in schools, and a lot of those things are the things that excite me the most.
It's just so awesome that you're sitting here telling people you've already made this a career. Any advice for young people who might consider costume design or production design?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you know that this is something that you want to do, I mean, don't expect for a reward right away. Meaning it will take time for you to really feel that this is your world or this is really what you want to do. I mean, reward can come later on, but it's all the things that you plant along the way that, for sure you will be successful in the end if that's your goal. But also be relevant, be knowledgeable about the world, what's going on. Always surround yourself with creative people, and and always just like go back to your first love. I mean, sometimes passion is very important, but along the way when you start feeling tired of doing things over and over again, somehow you won't see yourself shining anymore. But it's always going back to your first love. Like, always think about, how did I fall in love with the theater? How did I fall in love with theater design, for example? Like for me, how did I fall in love with Repertory Philippines and the people that I've worked here? So it's always the going back and the looking back that will really make you successful.
Well, it's always good to know that you know where your home is.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you, Raven.
Thank you, Adi.